What if I told you a diagnosis of young-onset Alzheimer's, which often comes with a shortened life expectancy, wasn't a life sentence, but a new beginning? A decade after his diagnosis, our guest is not just surviving, he's cycling his penny farthing, writing books, and advocating across the globe. This week, we dive deep into what it truly means to be living well with a memory impairment. We hear from Peter Barry, a man who found a path forward by staying engaged and turning his passion for cycling into a source of purpose and joy, proving that life after a diagnosis is not over, it's just different. He shares deeply personal stories, including how his own father lived an astonishing 25 years with the condition by remaining active in his family business. But this isn't just Peter's story. You'll also get invaluable insights from his close friend and co-author, Deb Bunt, on the simple yet profound caregiving strategies that make all the difference, like learning to adapt your approach, avoiding the urge to test or contradict, and how to stay positive for both your sake and theirs. It's a conversation packed with lessons on how to embrace that difference, adjust your expectations, and find the fun in the day-to-day moments, transforming the journey from a rocky road to a smoother path. Welcome to Fading Memories, your source for all things dementia caregiving. I'm your host, Jen Fink, and I have had 3 generations of loved ones with dementia, and I'm here to share the knowledge I've gained with you. Welcome back, Fading Memories listeners. I always appreciate you giving us time and your attention every single week. Like every week, I've got an excellent story for you. With me is Deb Bunt and Peter Barry. Peter was diagnosed with young-onset Alzheimer's at the age of 50, and with a life expectancy of 8 to 10 years, set about providing that it is possible to live well with the condition. Now age 61, Peter and I share a birth month. He is married with a daughter and remains a keen cyclist, still riding his penny farthing. Deb Bunt is the author of Peter's first book, Slow Puncture, Living Well with Dementia. She and her husband took early retirement and moved from London to Suffolk 7 years ago. And during this time, Deb has acquired 1 broken shoulder, 5 grandchildren, and 6 bicycles. She has also made a wonderful friend in Peter who has transformed her life. So welcome all the way across the pond and the country.
Hello,
Here at
hello,
Deb.
how are you all?
I am almost awake this early recording morning, and you guys are they're ready to wind their day down. So let's start with Deb. So what have you been up to since our last recording, which I think was in 2021?
Gosh, how long have we got? Well, let me try to pick out a couple of highlights. So, obviously, we had our book published then, the first book. That sort of snowballed, and we started to talk at a lot more events and conferences. I think one of the best ones was we got invited to Gibraltar to talk at their literary festival, so that was rather special. And we've made links right across the UK and into America through the advocacy work and Peter's very passionate way of explaining how he lives well with his condition. And I've acquired 5 grandchildren. I wasn't directly responsible for that, obviously.
Yeah.
You're not just picking them up at the shop?
No, they're definitely, apparently they're definitely all genetically attached to me.
And what have you been up to, Peter, besides advocating pretty much across the globe?
Well, I haven't acquired any grandchildren except for Deb's. I borrow hers on occasion, but apart from that, yeah, what have I been up to? Well, in actual fact, the answer to that is I don't really know. All I know is that I feel as though I've been doing well. I feel as though I've been doing all the right things. I do know that with Deb's help, I've been very passionately sharing that life is not over with dementia, it's just different, and trying to, I suppose, educate people about dementia. So that's really the extent of what I know that I've really been doing, really.
Well, that's substantial. That's kind of what I've been up to for the last few years. Well, 7.5. Since we last chatted, I now facilitate a support group, and I also do community education for the Alzheimer's Association and a little bit with AARP. So I find education to be the most important way caregivers can help navigate this journey with people like Peter, because the more you understand, the easier it is to navigate the changes that are going on. So why don't you catch us up, Peter? You were diagnosed at 50, which, dear, I thought my mom was young. She was about 53 when we look backwards. She wasn't diagnosed then because she was very good at deflecting and pretending everything was fine. She was actually officially diagnosed about halfway through the disease. So she deflected for a long time. But what changes did you notice in yourself that were concerning, that caused you to go to the doctor?
To begin with, I didn't really think that anything was wrong. And I think, as you just said about your mother, um, because this memory thing is a gradual thing, we tend to find coping strategies, and we're very good at changing the way we do things to cover it up a little bit. I suppose two things. One was, it was for me personally, it was, I suppose, I didn't want to really admit it. And the other thing was, I suppose I was a little bit embarrassed that I was starting to forget things. But I didn't notice quite so much. I just thought that my memory was because I was getting a little bit older at that time, and I had a lot going on in the business and that sort of thing. So it was mainly my wife who noticed that things were changing, because very often the person like me, we don't really know that we're changing that much. It's the people around us that seem to know that. But I do know that I used to have a very good memory for things, and I never wrote anything down. Everything was up here. In my business, it was all up here. All the buildings I designed and all the mathematics I did and all the equations were done up here. I didn't need a piece of paper. I just didn't use it. But as time went on, I started using bits of paper, and also I got so I couldn't add up and I couldn't subtract, and I couldn't work out the mathematics that were needed to do all the load bearings and the sizes and measurements, and it seemed to fall away quite quickly. And then, of course, we had some tests and things. But again, me being me, I tried to blag the test as much as I could because I didn't want the hassle of it all. So, yeah, so yeah, it was definitely my wife who noticed things more than me, and also my daughter as well. She noticed quite a bit as well. Yeah.
Well, I can't do equations and mathematics with paper or calculators. So
We got now. I used to, but not now.
that and not remembering names to save my life are normal for me, but not always normal for other people. So, were you always a cyclist?
Yes, yes, I did my first time trial in 1979 as a lad of about 15. So I've always been a keen cyclist, and I suppose when the business was going at full pelt and I got a young family, that sort of waned away a bit. I didn't have the time for it. But after my diagnosis and after the depression that followed after that, I then realized that cycling was a great compass to give me direction. It was a great thing that I could still do, and I didn't have to struggle with doing it. So it was easy for me to do. And that gave me a sense of purpose, and gave me a sense of achievement, and also made me feel so much better once I'd been out and done an hour's cycling, 2 hours cycling. It just as though it sort of took away the cloak of dementia, or unshackled the chains, or whatever you want to call it. It just made me free. So after that, I took cycling to a whole new level, and I'd done challenges across the country in here in England. We've cycled abroad, and yeah, it's still a great thing to do. And I recommend that if you get diagnosed with a form of Alzheimer's, dementia, or whatever, exercise is so important. Whether it's walking, swimming, gardening, all of those things, or cycling, just get out and use your body, because keeping the bit from your eyebrows down healthy definitely helps the bit from your eyebrows up. Can't knock it. It's got to work.
That is true. As you know, and I just mentioned, I do a lot of volunteering for the Alzheimer's Association. I like to refer to myself as a professional volunteer, because I don't got any more time to give them without some money coming back my way. But they were very excited when the first treatments came out, which was like, what, 3 years ago? 2021 and 2022. So yeah, 3-4 years ago. And as soon as they had the treatment drugs, it seemed like we almost immediately pivoted, like whiplash speed, to doing all of the lifestyle choices that keep us healthy. And it helps prevent dementias. It helps slow the progression of all kinds of dementias. So it was, interesting that they went from medication to lifestyle. And of course, they advocate for both when it's appropriate. But I recently met a gentleman who has been on one of the treatment drugs for 10 years. So he's obviously in the clinical trial. So he flew all the way across the United States, landed in Sacramento, gave a talk there, flew to Southern California, gave a talk. He traveled across the country completely alone. And I don't think, if you knew that he'd had Alzheimer's for at least 10 years, probably longer, that he was affected with the disease, because other than he kept kind of pivoting to his mission statement, his origin story, almost with every answer, which, is not necessarily a sign of much, other than that's just who he was. But it was very interesting. And, it's like, I'm traveling the opposite direction the end of this week. I'm going to the East Coast. Traveling's not easy, so doing it alone when you have Alzheimer's disease is amazing. So that lifestyle choices are definitely necessary, which is why after we're done with this, I will be doing my workout.
Well, my father lived 25 years with Alzheimer's.
Oh my gosh.
80, what was it, 82 or 92 or 93? 93. And it's only now, or the last few years, that I've realized why that happened, why he lived so long and so well. And that's because he was still engaged in the business that he started in 1947. I never treated him as father with Alzheimer's. I just treated him as father. Every day he came into work with me for about 18 years. He would work with me all day. I asked his opinion. I kept him involved. He did the same things. He wasn't put on the shelf. He wasn't just put to one side. In actual fact, life wasn't much different for him after the diagnosis. He just continued to carry on. And I always remember, and I might have said this before, that when the doctor gave him his diagnosis, so the doctor said to him, right, you've got Alzheimer's and we'll give you, the statutory 8 to 10 years to live and all the rest of it. Oh, yes, my father said. So he said, you do understand, Mr. Berry? Yes, I understand you perfectly well. He said, thank you. Right. And he said, do you have any concerns? But no. He said, I'm not concerned about it. He said, I'm going to let everybody else around me concerned about it. And that's what he did. That was his approach to it. He just wasn't that worried about it. And I think that's why he lived as long as he did with the condition. Yeah. And he was great fun to be with. He was a terrific man, wonderful bloke. A terrible memory, but a great person to be with.
Well, there are many people with terrible memories that don't have a cognitive disease. So I don't think we ever talked about your dad in the previous episode. Obviously, a positive state of mind helped him. And I'm assuming from the comments that you're making that you were an architect?
We ran a lumber business, which, in actual fact, architecture was part of the business. The solid foundation was the timbering side of it, but most of the buildings that we constructed were built out of timber. So that's how that all happened. Yeah.
And when you said he was still part of the business for a long time, he didn't have, didn't cause issues with clients or jobs?
Basically, once he had his diagnosis, he'd sort of retired anyway, and I had taken the business over. But I still kept him involved, and most of the clients at that time enjoyed him so much, his company, they liked him, so they would always go to him as the front man, and I was always the person behind. And I liked that because that still gave him that sense of responsibility. And as his condition worsened over the years, as his memory got a lot worse, physically he was very well, I just adjusted what I did up at the sawmill in the workplace. We just adjusted things to accommodate him so that he could carry on doing the things that he enjoyed up there. If he hadn't have been up at that place and worked for all them years, I think he would have because he had no hobbies, he would have very quickly gone downhill. And I realise now that the only reason he kept going was because he had this burning sense of being part of something, and that just kept him going, I think. Yeah.
Oh, I believe that fully. Can you remember what kind of things you did to adjust the business to keep him engaged?
Yeah. We had a very big workshop, and he would constantly lose his tools. They would constantly, and I used to spend a good hour in the evenings going around finding all of these things. So we created boxes, open boxes, that we put on the walls with Jim's tools, so that he could put them in these boxes. And there was, I think, 4 boxes around the workshop. So it didn't matter where he was, he could always put them in a box. So at the end of the day, they were basically going to be in one of 4 boxes. The other thing we did is we put lots of clocks around, because he used to ask me what the time was regularly. One of the things he used to do when I used to pick him up when he stopped driving, I used to pick him up and he used to say to me, "What's the time, Peter boy?" I'd say, "8:30, Father." "Oh, right." And I'd put the key in the ignition and I'd turn the key and he'd say, "You ain't got the time on you, have you?" I say, "8:30. Right." I'd turn the vehicle round. He'd say, "Oh, I wonder what the time is." I say, "8:30, Father." Right. And this would go on for about 10, 15 minutes. So what I did is I just stuck a digital clock on the dashboard right in front of him. And he used to get into the vehicle, he'd look at the clock and he could see what the time was. So there was just those very small adjustments that just made it better for him to cope, but it also made my life a bit better as well. And the other thing is that the machinery in the actual sawmill, a lot of that he had actually been working with before I was even born. So he knew more about that machinery than I did. So in actual fact, I never worried about the machinery because it was something that was in his second nature. And also because he was over a retirement age, I didn't employ him. He came there under his own free will, so there wasn't any health and safety issues, because he was a gentleman who came in the yard and did what he wanted to do and went home. If I'd have employed him, it would have been a different scenario. But because of that, and yeah, we had a big planing machine, and he used to plane timber if it wanted planing or not. He'd plane it all day, and he was happy planing. So it was fine.
That's amazing, because we didn't know as much about Alzheimer's back then. Did the customers that came into the business know that he had the disease?
Yes, they did. Later on, a lot of people knew, but they would still come over and have a chat with him because basically he was just a lovely guy to talk to. And they used to come in the yard and they would say, "Oh, Jim's over there. I'll just go and have a word with Jim." I say, yeah, of course you do. They go over, "How are you?" "Oh, I'm all right." He'd say, I'd shake his hand and they'd have a chat. He said, "Well, if you want some timber, go and see my boy over there. He'll sort you out." And that was it, And because he was such a prominent figure, and when he died, people sent messages from all over the country in the timber trade, all over England, to to say how sorry they were that Sir James had passed away, because he was a very prominent figure in the world of timber, if that makes sense. Yeah,
It does, because I advocate strongly that doing exactly what you did and educating the community around you on this is how you live well with this disease, which you guys did just, I don't know, by luck, it sounds like. It doesn't sound like anybody said, here's what you should do. I'm sure that you didn't have too much guidance, so kudos to you and your family for keeping dad so well for so long. My mom had Alzheimer's for probably about the same amount of time, but we lived with a lot of the problems. She would talk to clients, take orders with no direction. So I don't know if you guys remember, we had a family portrait studio and a 1-hour photo lab, and we did a lot of photo restorations. So a client would come in with old photos. They would talk about the photos and chit chat with my mom to the point where my mom forgot what the order was supposed to be. And that got really old really quick. So I wish we had known to do what you did, because I think that would have made everybody's life better. When they were,
it was a lot better with my father than we'll say other family members at that time. I don't think people quite understood him. I think people found him difficult at times, but it wasn't him that was the problem. It was their lack of understanding, not his condition. And I didn't treat him any different than I did before his diagnosis. And I think because of that, we would spend all day together. We'd have father-son bickers, but we never had a crossed word. He would be home for about an hour and a half, and all hell would kick loose. Because it was an environment where he wasn't part of what was going on. He wasn't part of the decision making. Everybody was trying to help him and wrap him in cotton wool and this and that. And he was a man who had thrived on his own, and he needed to continue to do that. And that's what I gave him. And I found it so easy to give that to him, because it was not what I'd call A, complicated, B, difficult. And why would you not? Because he's still the person he was. Yes, he can forget things, but he's still that person. And that's how I treated him, And we used to have a great time together. We really did. Yeah, I miss him dearly. He was good fun to be with. Not as much fun as me, of course. But no, good fun at me. Oh no, not you, no me.
Yes, you are great fun, Peter.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Yes, you read that. Oh, yeah, didn't you?
You got a great mom.
so I'm assuming that you took that knowledge of how you handled your father's diagnosis into your own diagnosis.
Yes, yeah. It took me a little while to get there, if I'm really honest. And the first year wasn't quite so good for me. And looking back on it, I should have realized what I was doing for him, and I should have done the same for myself. But I didn't actually realize at that time that I was doing anything special for him. I didn't see what I was doing. And it took me a little while for me to understand that what I did for him is what I need to do for myself, or what people need to do that are around me. And that's what people need to do for others. So I thought, well, maybe we can start educating people here about, dementia is very complicated, but it's also, if you attack the simple parts of it, it makes it a bit more uncomplicated. And let's go with the simple stuff. And it sort of untangles that nasty web that's inside people's brains a little bit. And that's sort of where we got to now. And I couldn't do it without Deb's assistance, because she's key to that. As I was key to my father, basically. That was sort of what has happened.
Well, what I've learned, what Peter's taught me, was to take some of those tactics that he did with his dad and adapt them for Peter. So it works in our everyday life when we're out and about cycling or whatever we're doing, because it's not complicated, as he says. It makes sense to have a note on his bike to say where he's going and what time he's meeting me, or to have bullet points on a bit of paper when we're driving somewhere so he knows where we're going. Or to fill in the colour, which is something Peter is very keen about. Everyone is a black and white sketch. There's no colour, but it's up to the people around with memory impairment to fill in the colour. So then that person is included in the conversation. So I've learnt from the master, I think.
So when did you enter Peter's life? So he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in, what did you say, 93?
No, when he was 50.
He was 50. So what year was
10 years ago.
10? Oh yeah, I can do math. Not generally this early in the morning.
2015.
15.
Okay.
So my husband Martin and I moved up here probably 3 years into his diagnosis.
That seems a lot longer than this.
Tell me about it.
This is true. The globe has gone through a lot in the past 10 years.
I've known Peter for 7 years, and I only know Peter with his diagnosis. So in a way, that makes it easier because I can't mourn the things he might have lost because I don't know those things. So yeah, I've known him for 7 years, and we've just done so much stuff. And he's taught me a lot about my own life and how to view things in a different perspective. And he's helped me fulfill these ambitions to be a writer. So I owe him a lot. Okay.
Of a little bit like, I suppose, a very nice portrait, and I was a portrait with a very ornate frame. And now the frame is gone. All Debs is seeing is the portrait. She's never seen it framed. Had she seen it framed, she would have seen a different portrait. Does that make sense?
That's good.
It does to me, being a photographer. Were you always a cyclist, Deb?
No, when I lived in London, I was a runner and a swimmer, which I intended to continue when I came up here, but I had a bit of a mishap with my shoulder, and it's made swimming impossible, and my back hurts too much to run. But I also very quickly met Peter, and although I like cycling in London isn't really that easy, but cycling where we are, which is very rural, is easy. So I just became a cyclist. And I worked it out. I've been in Suffolk just over 7 years, and I've cycled 41,000 miles.
Oh my gosh. I haven't kept track of my miles.
Yeah, so
I moved from the suburbs of the San Francisco Bay Area that had some hills to the Sierra Nevada foothills. I had to start a subgroup of my new cycling club because this past summer they have decided that the Saturday ride that's supposed to be kind of general for everybody is longer, faster, and climbing more hills. And it's like, I'm tired. I just want to go for a nice little ride. But because I'm not from here, I can't make routes. So I have a new friend who he is my new cartographer. He has created all kinds of routes for this subgroup. And we went out this past Saturday, so a couple days ago. Beautiful ride. Got to look at some fall leaves, which people don't think California gets. We do. Just got to look a little harder for them. And it was a lovely ride. So, but I don't keep track of my miles. I just go and have fun. And when I get back from my conference, then we're going to have a birthday ride for me. It's going to be a busy weekend. I might have to get some rest at the conference.
Well, that's all I do now. I used to keep track of everything when I was more competitive, but now all I want to do now is just get on the bike and ride. And I don't care how fast I go, the distance I go. It's just about riding. That's all it is for me. Getting away from my dementia monster and being Peter the cyclist, basically, instead of Peter with Alzheimer's, really. That's just what it does for me.
But I do see the positive impact of exercise. I mean, I know I feel it myself, but I see for Peter, his brain is lit up. He's got the endorphins pumping through his body. It does him good. And I think everyone should be moving around more. Like we said at the beginning of this chat, people need to move around if they can.
Medical science is very good, but it can only do so much. And I think that there was a point in time where we were relying too much on medical science. And actually, we are responsible for ourselves. Yes, the doctor can give us medication, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with us. Do we want to be a bigger part of this. So the medication is a small part, and how we move about and what we do is a bigger part, which is, and the brain is like any other organ. If you don't use it, it's not going to work so well. So for me personally, joints, sort of fingers, arms and legs, the idea of having a bit that bends is so you can use it. So you've just got to use it and get on with it, really, haven't you?
Well, I used to take my mom out to the park, to the swimming pool. We went and watched kids. It was always kind of a joke. People would ask, "Oh, what are you going to do with your mom today?" And because I am slightly weird and proud of it, I would be like, "We're going to go out and watch children." Yeah, I was like, occasionally I would just respond, "Well, we're just going to go to the park and watch kids." And people would look at me like, do I need to be concerned? Because they would forget that that's why I did it, was because that's what my mom enjoyed. But I also noticed being out in the fresh air and the sunshine, and I know England's not necessarily known for sunshine as compared to California, but just that 45 minutes or whatever in the sun, there just seemed to be a little bit more spark behind the eyes. I don't know that other people would have noticed because she was pretty advanced at the time, but it was amazing. Even, she and I don't like cold, and we'd go out when it was, not terribly warm, and, she still enjoyed it. We'd go to the dog park and watch dogs. I took my mom and 3 golden retrievers once to the dog park. What a circus. But she had a great time, and you could almost learn a little bit from the dogs. So I had my youngest one at the time. She was holding his leash, and they came across a stanchion pole, and I thought, uh-oh, they're going to get tangled up because he being a dog and her having Alzheimer's, this pole is going to cause an issue. So I turned around to make sure, that there wasn't an issue. And he just looked at her and went around the pole. It's like he knew, he understood. And she looked at him like, oh dear, we got to navigate. It was really interesting, like subtle interspecies communication. She'd had dogs forever, so it wasn't out of her skill set. It was just interesting that it happened that way. And that was probably less than 6 months before she passed away. So it was interesting. Have you always ridden a penny farthing? Those look terrifying to me.
Yeah, actually, we used to ride them when I was in my middle teens. So I've always ridden them for many years. And then I went for a stage in my life where I didn't ride them. And after being diagnosed, I went back to the club that I was a member of and see if I could borrow one to see if I could remember how to ride it. And of course, I did, as soon as I put my foot on the rear step, I hopped up on, and I thought, well, yeah, of course I haven't forgotten, no, it's all in here. And I think that's when we did the challenge of riding the 4 or 5 counties of Great Britain after that, didn't we? Because I wanted to do something different. I didn't just want to be on a bicycle. I wanted to, I suppose, raise the bar a little bit, but I wanted to show people that you can still achieve things with Alzheimer's. You can still achieve the things that you used to achieve and more, and push the boundaries a little bit. There's nothing wrong with being able just to risk it a little bit, because there's nothing wrong with that. It's rather exciting just to be on that edge of can I, can't I. It sort of just helps you move a bit further. But you were talking about your mother and the dog, and just one thing that I wanted to just throw in here was a story that springs to mind. That when my father had Alzheimer's, the latter part of his time, he was in a care home, and they were playing these games at a table, and he wasn't one for playing games. That wasn't his thing, really. And one of these games was a game with all of these ball bearings, and you had to try and get the ball bearings in the little cups and little holes. And as you got them in one side, they fell out, and the other side, and father sat there, and I sat there with him, and he was watching all these people, you see, and this woman said, that's a difficult game, Jimmy. No, nothing difficult about that, he said. Well, she said, everybody here has tried it. And she said, nobody has done it yet. So she said, you have a go. Look here, he said. And he got it, and he put it on the table and spun it round. And because all the balls went in the holes.
Oh, since
Slithered over to it, he said, there you are, if that takes somebody who knows something, daughter. And that was it. And I said, what the hell? Well, he said, centrifugal force. He said, everybody knows it. And he came up with that just like that. And this was a man who was over 90. He'd had Alzheimer's for 24 years or more then, and yet he knew what to do there. And they were amazed. But of course, if you think about it, it is simple science, something that he knew from many years back, just like the dogs. It was something that is somehow keyed in.
So go ahead, Deb.
Okay, and that appears in our new book as well. Peter doesn't know what's in our book.
I've got no idea.
You do know that a book.
I said, no, Dad, because you told me outside. You never stop going on, ain't it?
That on my shoulder. So because that's such a great little story about old memories and logic and common sense that I thought I'd pop it in the book for you.
Well done. Thank you very much. Yes, I'll write you a check later.
So the first book, Slow Puncture, give us a little synopsis about that. There you go.
Been a Peter for a year when I wrote it. So it's effectively an overview of that year in his life when I first met him and how my understanding of Alzheimer's from pretty zero changed. It captured some of the activities and challenges that Peter had done and a little bit of a look at my life and what knowing Peter had done from my perspective on, what was the point of me. So it's really a year's overview of Peter's life and our friendship. The second book, which is 5 years after the first, obviously I know Peter a lot more, and it charts all the activities we've done, or some of the activities, but it focuses a little bit more on me and how I've changed and how working and being with Peter has increased my confidence and made me a little bit bolshy at times and anxious for centre stage. But also it charts, there has been a shift in Peter's condition, but it looks at that and what do we do to carry on? So a bit like when Peter was saying about putting the digital clock on the van, you don't stop, you find a solution. So it's all the things I've learned and the strategies just a bit more of a narrative about our friendship. And Peter knows very little about me, but he is a great friend. How does that work for him? He feels it in his heart, whereas I know a lot about him. So looking at that as a potential for almost being abusive, I could do what I wanted. I know so much about Peter. How does he know he can trust me? So all those sort of things are there. And I'm nervous, but also excited to have another book out. And in fact, it was Peter who thought of the title, Patching the Puncture. So you've got Slow Puncture, Patching the Puncture. What do we do to continue to move forward?
What advice would you give caregivers, Deb, that, they could take away, since that's who's listening? What have you learned in the 5 years that between the two books that you think would be helpful for caregivers?
Everyone's condition is different, so I can only speak from my knowledge of Peter. But I think I have to accept he has a poor memory. He cannot change that. I have to accept it and adapt what I do to fit in with how his mind works. I think as well, Peter's really intuitive. So if I feel sad, he can't remember that, he's going to pick up my mood. So it's up to me, I think, to try and be upbeat and positive. And it's actually easy to be positive around Peter because he's a very positive person. But I think for me, the biggest thing is I have to accept he won't remember. Don't test him. Don't say, do you remember when? Because he won't. And who wants to be tested? Don't contradict him. If he got something wrong, it doesn't matter. Move on. So there's a very short story. We have a friend in common who, for some reason, Peter thinks he has a little dog, Howard. And Peter always would say, oh, Howard, I'm a little dog. And at first I would say he hasn't got a dog. And then I thought, what's the point of saying he hasn't got a dog? For Peter, he has got a dog. I just say, yep, and we move on. So accepting his lack of memory in a way that doesn't make Peter depressed about it and adapting what I do to fit in with that. It's up to me. It's up to me to step into your world.
We can do that, and we do that a lot. People think that because they can't see somebody's memory issues that it doesn't exist. Now, let's just say that you've got somebody with one arm. You don't ask them to carry bags in each arm. You don't say to them, oh, for goodness sakes, just grow a new arm and carry the bags, because that would be the right thing to say. But what people are actually saying in a roundabout way is, grow some more brain and remember. Now, when you start putting things to people in that way, it then seems absolutely ridiculous that they would say to somebody, well, why don't you remember? And they get it when you do the bit with the one arm or one leg or whatever it is. They then think, well, yeah, it's so obvious. So the way that people react is not because they're being nasty or whatever. It's because they haven't thought about it, and they haven't actually connected it with other disabilities. And how would you treat somebody with one arm or with one leg or no legs? And how do you treat somebody? And there's not a lot of difference. The concept is very much the same. And when you start doing it, and I often say to people, you can enter people's world quite easily, and they do it with grandchildren. Every day, if people had grandchildren come round and the grandchildren want to draw a picture, you get the crayons out and you get the pencils out and you draw a big sunshine and a stick mummy and a stick daddy and a dog. And that's it. You don't draw a picture of a cathedral because the child couldn't relate to it. You draw a picture that the child can relate to. So if it's that easy, then why can't we then, when somebody's not remembering, just be their friend? Or adjust yourself to fit in with them. When I used to go and see my father, he didn't know who I was. Who are you? I didn't say to him, oh, I'm Peter, number 4 son, and we have this great big argument. I just used to say to him, well, I come past and saw the piece of paper on your door, and you were a timber man. Yes, well, I'm in the timber business. I just thought, would you mind if I sat down and have a chat with you? Well, no, dear boy. Now, I became his friend for an hour and a half. It didn't matter that he didn't know I was his son, because I knew that I was his son. So why would I have to reinforce that? And we would have a great time. We'd have a laugh because I knew everything about him. I'd walk away. And then the next day I'd come in and he hadn't seen me for 6 months, according to him, and that bad big. So, you know what I mean? It wasn't complicated.
But I think the other thing is, Peter says dementia is a moving target, and it is. And things change. So what might have worked on Monday may not work on Friday. So again, it's the person around the person with dementia who needs to adapt and adjust and anticipate changes and continue to accommodate them as they happen. You can't be stuck in, well, that worked last week because it's not working this week. So we need to move alongside him, I think, rather than asking Peter to walk alongside us.
It's the same as if you go into the supermarket and they've moved the potatoes. You don't go running out of the new supermarket screaming. You find a solution by finding the potatoes. So if something doesn't work, as Deb has said on the Monday, then it's quite easy to find a solution to what works on the Wednesday. It's not that difficult, really. I don't think, anyway.
Now, when you put it like that, I think that is very true. I think the biggest challenge for people like me is remembering who they were. Like, my mom was my mom, but as Alzheimer's progressed, she also thought I was her best friend, which I like to claim as an upgrade. And she would tell people, I've known her forever, which would make people laugh because obviously she'd known me the longest. And then she would laugh, and it was, it never bothered me. I lost a lot of weight, and I knew I barely recognized the reflection in the mirror. I'm like, there's no way. She is not putting old me and this me as the same person. So I did not experience that grief when I confirmed, like on my birthday, that she didn't remember our relationship. But she always knew me as the fun person that took her out to watch children or go to the dog park or whatever we would do. But I think the biggest challenge is that like that the history and the emotions to who they were before. I think that's probably the hardest part of being a caregiver is letting that go without I don't know. I'm not sure how to verbalize it very well, but letting it go without just saying, oh, well, that's the past and forgetting about it. Cause we don't want to forget about that. I don't want to forget about my childhood with my mom. Well, some parts maybe.
Yeah, but I suppose you've got to look at it in the way that it's some sort of evolution, some sort of change, and everything changes. But the time that you did have and how your mother was X amount of years ago was something that you can remember. It happened, and that's it. And then we can change to where we are now. So you made the best of what happened here 30, 40 years ago. Let's make the best of what's going on here, because life's too short not to, in a strange way. And I'm glad I did all that with my father, because in actually making his life better and fun and enhancing his life, what it did in a funny way was it also made my life better and enhanced my life. Yes, the old Jim was there, but he was really hiding in the shadows sometimes. And the new Jim, he wasn't the same. But then, who is the same? You know? And in actual fact, I was very pleased, because I'd had the old father many years ago, and now I'd got this new fun guy who really didn't worry about anything, who just wanted to be around people and had fun, you know. So I embraced that as well as I embraced the earlier part, really. And I suppose that's just the way that I did it. It's not easy, and everybody is different, but sometimes if people take little snippets of what I think is the right way to do things, if they take little snippets and adjust them to their lives, then it makes the person with Alzheimer's life a lot better, but also makes their life a lot better. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, isn't it, really?
The other thing I do, I know that Peter lives in the moment. He doesn't make memories, he makes moments. So when we're hanging out together, that's what I do. I live the fun time with him at that time, because there's no point in expecting he's going to remember. That's only going to stress me out. So we recently went to Switzerland to do a talk at a conference. I know he has no recollection of that too. But in the moment when we were doing it, I could tell it meant something to him, and therefore it meant something to me.
Alzheimer's is a little bit like the work colleague you don't particularly want to be with, but you have to work with every day because that's what your living is. You sort of have to be with it, but you don't want to be with it, if it makes sense.
That is actually a great analogy. And you said, you know, if somebody can take snippets of what you've done and adapt it to their journey with this disease, that is the whole point of these conversations. Because I started this show because I needed this kind of advice, and I've been doing the show longer than my mom. Then I did 3 years with my mom, and now 5 years without her. So, and I'm still learning great things, and this has been a fantastic conversation. So I know it's like approaching bedtime for you guys, and I still got to start my day a little bit. So both books will be linked in the episode notes, the show notes. And is there any last little tidbit of advice you want to leave the listeners? See if I can talk.
No, and I know Peter's condition is different from other people's. Everyone's dementia is different, but I think my life is enriched by knowing Peter, and I think the one thing Peter really benefits from is social interactions, social connections, not being stuck at home. Yes, he might get tired, but then he won't be tired after he's had a night's sleep. So keep going out, keep doing things, and keep positive. And that's from Peter, I think.
Yeah, Alzheimer's is a very grey, dull box. But if you can work out how to open that box, people with Alzheimer's, they had lived, they had loved, they had laughed, they had cried. They've all got pasts. Take that past and use it. Try and enhance it and make the best that you can with it, because the journey, it can be a very rocky road, or it can be a smoother path depending on how we want to do it. But try and create some fun. If somebody puts the milk in the oven, it's not the end of the world. It's just milk in the oven. It doesn't matter. Have a laugh about it. You know, we're heating the milk up today, are we, Mother? You know, well, who put that in there then? Ah, it must have been that other person at work. Just let it go, because in the grand scheme of things, it's not that important. Life is not so much over with dementia. It's just different. And if we embrace the difference, then that's the way forward. That's what I think anyway.
I fully agree. Well, I appreciate you guys logging in late, me early. Good luck with the next book. And do you think there's going to be a third one, Deb?
I don't know. I didn't think there was going to be a second one until I sat down last year and wrote it. So who knows? Depends how busy he keeps me.
Ah, that's a good point. Well, we will have to stay tuned for that.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for adding this out. Thank you.